Hi, I'm Justin Jones. My group partners are Kathy Fujiwara, Ashley Emery, Kyle Gravener. We're here to talk to you about MedMen Canada. We're going to talk through the market and why it's a unique business opportunity specifically for MedMen. We'll get into cultural considerations, risks, and finish with our market entry strategy into Canada. MedMen is a publicly traded United States-based cannabis company. It is currently traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange. It was founded in 2010 by Adam Bierman and Andrew Maudlin in California and has grown to encompass the entire United States with stores in Florida, New York, Illinois, Nevada, and as of 2019, the business is estimated to do over $50 million and have over 1,000 employees. With the success that they've had in the United States, MedMen has established a global expansion plan where the business will form MedMen Canada, a subsidiary of the United States-based operation. In preparation to go into Canada, we have decided to focus on not just British Columbia, but very specifically the Vancouver region of Canada. In order to do this, MedMen has formed a cross-border partnership with Canadian company Cronos Group, as well as has already partnered with the largest federally licensed cannabis manufacturer in Canada called Aurora Cannabis. A little background on cannabis in Canada. Medical cannabis use was legalized in Canada in 2001. In October of 2018, Canada became the second country in the world to formally legalize cannabis possession, acquisition, and consumption. In 2019, Canada is expected to pass a law legalizing the use of alternative cannabis products such as drinks, edibles, and topicals. It's estimated that over 5 million people in Canada use cannabis at least once a year, and around 3.8 million people use it recreationally regularly. Until late 2018, retail stores in Canada were operated by the government in the cannabis sector. However, they are now transitioning into private-owned retail shops. Each province in Canada has a slightly different process for providing these recreational licenses. British Columbia is one of the only provinces in Canada that is not following a lottery process. Instead, they have an application process which includes a $7,500 fee for store operators. While this does provide a measure of risk because almost anyone will be able to get a license, it also is what is providing us the opportunity to purchase licenses and get into the market quickly. The cannabis industry in British Columbia is estimated to be worth about $6 billion annually. 40% of that, of all Canadian cannabis, is produced in British Columbia, so that makes it one of the most valuable cash crops in the entire province. British Columbia also has the second highest cannabis usage per capita in Canada and has the highest support for recreational legalization. MedMen will follow the same successful formula they used within the United States. They're going to raise private funds, purchase an already established cannabis retailer. Each MedMen location operates independently with that private funding and is then ran by MedMen Enterprises. MedMen plans to purchase at least 2 Vancouver licenses with a goal to quickly add a third and expand from there. With the ability to saturate the market in Vancouver with no limits on licensing, it'll be important that MedMen highlight their competitive advantages. They've created the largest United States cannabis business because of their unique business model. MedMen creates a unique customer experience for its cannabis customers with a sleek storefront similar to an Apple store or a Starbucks. They have a rigorous training process for staff and a loyalty reward system that doesn't exist anywhere else in the industry. Although MedMen does have a strong brand presence in the United States, the Canadian market is a bit more unaware of the brand and has a much lower brand affinity. Upon entry into Canada, it will be imperative that MedMen Canada quickly strengthen its brand awareness, highlighting its customer advantage. To do this, MedMen will be offering limited time 10% discounts to new customers who sign up for their customer loyalty program. They'll advertise in Canadian-based cannabis magazines. They'll build a social media following with Canada, and they're going to partner with Canadian social media influencers. The close proximity to the United States makes Canada an enticing entry into the global market. It's English speaking, and familiar American brands give the Canadian consumers points of familiarity. Some of these instances could be why many assume Canada to be just like the US. While there is some truth to this, Canada does have distinct differences. Canadian consumers are highly influenced by advertisements. They're very susceptible to purchasing trendy products, but they also expect high quality sales service and after sales customer support. This lines up perfectly with what MedMen already does very well in the United States. In addition, the middle-aged baby boomers are treating themselves to numerous leisure activities. They care about their food and they're looking for natural organic health foods. Again, MedMen is a company that stresses the wellness factor of cannabis use as much as it does the recreational factor. When we look at the cultural dimension analysis, we draw on the Geert Hofstede theory. The first thing you'll notice is that Canada and the United States are extremely similar. A number of these values are almost exactly the same or within a point or two. This helps us as we move into a new market. It's less that we have to adjust for, it's less that we have to adapt to. There are a few differences. Looking at this, the Canadian consumer is a bit more pragmatic than the US consumer and has a little bit more of the long-term orientation that we see here in the United States. Looking at Canada's cannabis consumption, again, there's a ton of similarities between the US and the Canadian markets. Inhaling or smoking continues to be the preferred method in both markets, with edibles and then topicals following that. Consumer habits in Canada are to pair cannabis with music, movies, snacks, even exercise. But primarily, it's a relaxation purpose. Edibles are still facing the legalization issue in Canada, but that is expected to be dealt with by the end of this year. Looking at the ages and the gender of the users, again, very similar to the United States. Average users are around 40, men more than women. So a lot of what we're doing in the US will transfer directly over to Canada. Canada has a highly skilled and educated workforce with increasing technology, manufacturing, and mining industries, giving it an industrial and urban economy. Similar to the United States, it's a market-oriented economic system with affluent living standards. One could argue that Canada's economy depends on the US. In 2018, 584 billion Canadian dollars in goods were exported. 3/4 of that went to the US. Also understanding that they're a major trading partner under the US-Canada Free Trade Agreement and under NAFTA, it again shows their familiarity with working with US companies and is another piece that helps us feel confident we can step in and be accepted quickly in the Canadian culture. Looking at risks, first looking at regulatory and political, there are some high short-term risks, especially around the regulatory piece. These regulations are changing weekly, monthly, and this is not any different than what's happening currently in the United States. So while this is something we need to take into account, we feel very confident that our set of compliance directives that we use in the US will transfer over to Canada and help us navigate that compliance culture as well there. From a natural disaster standpoint, there's a small earthquake risk. Again, we see this as extremely low and nothing that would cause us to not enter the country. From a contamination standpoint, there is a little bit more risk there. These crops being contaminated, it could spread in transit. damaging the entire store inventory in the right environment. The one good piece that the country of Canada has already put in place is the seed to sale tracking system. This allows any plant to be tracked all the way back to its inception. If we do encounter any issues, we'll be able to quickly identify where they came from, why they occurred, and adjust. Competitive risk, low to moderate. The marketplace is just getting stood up at this time. Most of the stores there are one-off stores, mom and pop type of shops that don't have the buying power that MedMen will have and don't have the experience or expertise that MedMen has in setting up the training programs and designing the stores. There is also a slight competitive risk when it comes to growers. These are mostly multi-billion-dollar corporations that are being set up in Canada and are looking to export out of Canada, even into Europe or into South America for the highest dollar. We feel that the Canadian pride that we have encountered so far and have researched will keep these companies doing business in Canada and not exclusively exporting. There is some other supply chain risk in that virtually all of this cannabis in Canada is grown indoors due to the Canadian climate. The current demand is outpacing the supply, and it's expected that the supply won't catch up to demand until the end of 2021. As part of our entry into Canada, we also expect to set up our own supply chain and grow our own product. We can't bring anything across the U.S. federal border, so we will have to start from scratch once we get there. The biggest threat is probably going to be the gray market. These are illegal or unlicensed stores that are selling without paying their taxes, giving the customer a much lower cost. Much like in the US, though, as cities, states, and provinces realize how much these stores are eating into their tax base, they are starting to crack down and remove these stores on their own. This is a problem that we think will become less and less over time, and something that we definitely have the ability to weather in the short term. So as a review, our market entry strategy into Canada is going to be a direct investment, buying our own retail licenses and setting up our own stores. Of course, we will have partnerships with the main growers in Canada, their distribution networks. We're going to be looking for the right location. This is probably one of the most important pieces of our entry strategy. High traffic area, highly visible, and we're looking to blend our two stores between both the local Canadian market and our tourist market that Vancouver is so famous for. Internally, our staffing plans will look very similar to what we already have in the United States. However, our training plans are what we're going to have to adjust as we look at the individualism differences that occur in Canada versus our US stores. In addition to this, our own brands are critical to our internal success. We're going to need to set up our own supply chain, grow for ourselves. Those exclusive MedMen brands is a piece that is going to set us apart from the rest of our competitors. Looking to the future, we'll expand quickly through Canada, staying primarily in the large cities, close to the US-Canadian border, and looking to attract as many tourists as possible as well. The step after that would be the possibility of growing our own brand and exporting our own cannabis product to either the European and or South American market. The more we look into it, the more excited about this we become. Due to the market and cultural similarities, the lack of established competition, and the geographic and political closeness, MedMen will be making tweaks, not wholesale changes, and can soon dominate the Canadian market. Thank you.